Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a really long time since I last uploaded, and I'm sorry about that. Just had so much stuff to do in my personal life that I couldn't really focus on my channel, but I just want to thank all of you so much for your patience. I hope this video is a good one to get it moving again. So today we'll be going over my top 5 tips to win races in Forza Horizon 5. Now real quick before you begin, if you enjoy my content and you just want to see more in general, please subscribe. My channel is so tiny at the moment that anybody subscribing is really helpful. You guys can make a big difference, and even if you choose not to subscribe or like, it still makes a big difference because you watch my videos and you help me grow. So thanks to everyone for supporting me, and let's get right into today's video. So let's start with our first tip. Use a car that matches your driving. This one might seem a bit obvious. To put it bluntly, you don't win races in a trash car. But you'd be surprised that many actually overlook the very first step to getting better and winning races, having a car that fits into their driving style. Even some of the best drivers in Forza struggle to do well against other players and even top AI if the car doesn't match their driving. So find something that fits with how you drive. If you like to be really aggressive on the brakes, like the majority of Forza drivers, and find the car oversteering into the wall and corners, get a tune that will allow you to be stable under braking. If you, like me, tend to be more conservative on the brakes but very aggressive with your steering, find a tune that minimizes understeer so you can have perfect turn into corners. You'll be amazed by your confidence in races afterward. Generally, when I look for a tuning setup in the Find Tunes menu, I look for the one with the best handling and I try it out. If you're still figuring out your driving style, do a race against AI and watch the replay. I find that not controlling the car but instead observing how you did it in the race is really helpful for figuring out how you tend to drive. As I mentioned, tuning is also a great way to get the car to perform the way you want. You can find in-depth tuning guides for Forza Horizon 5 all over YouTube, so I won't really get into that here. My second tip is to make sure to use a car that fits the event. It might sound even more obvious than the first one, but really, it surprises me how many people I find in Horizon Open events driving cars that are meant for something completely different than the event. Don't race road cars in dirt races or cross-country races, and don't race off-road cars in street races or road races. It's a pretty simple way to instantly improve. Also, make sure you quickly glance at the race route and your car's stats before starting the event. For example, something with a low top speed like the Exomotive off-road buggy will struggle in an event like the El Descenso cross-country. Sadly, I had to learn this the hard way, so take it from me rather than having to go through the pain of driving a car built for the wrong thing in a race. My third tip for winning races is to drive against harder AI. It might almost sound like an oxymoron that driving against better drivers will help you to win races. It's hard to believe, but it really is true. You might struggle for a few races, but you'll eventually find yourself making moves on drivatars in places you never would have dared to make them before, and winning races you always struggled with. It's kind of like doing really hard practice problems for math to get better at a concept. For me, it was a huge part of my growth as a Forza driver to race against harder and harder AI. I started playing Horizon all the way back in Horizon 3, racing against base AI and having a hard time even coming close to them. I remember finishing dead last in my first ever race, thinking I was garbage and would never get good. And here I am now, 2 games and a couple years later, winning multiple races against unbeatable AI. I know there's people who can effortlessly win against unbeatable AI, but I could guarantee you that even they couldn't do those kinds of things when they started playing. My fourth tip is to practice. You don't have to dedicate hours to practicing a specific race or anything, you just have to get some experience under your belt. I feel like about 8 to 10 hours in total on the game is enough to get used to the physics engine. You'll want to do this especially if you're coming to Forza Horizon 5 from a previous Horizon game, like Horizon 4. The physics model does change from game to game, and it takes some time and practice to get used to it, so do make sure you're used to the physics of the new game. It really helps to get into that groove to improve your driving. Also, you should get used to the handling of the cars that you usually drive. If you often drive a specific car in road races, for example, you should practice with that car to get better attuned to its handling and performance in general. Remember that every car is different, so the more practice you have driving differently performing cars, the better you'll be able to do in general. Last but certainly not least, my fifth tip is to drive online. I specifically say online, so I mean things like Horizon Open or Horizon Tour. The reason you should be practicing online is so that you get used to playing without rewinds. Of course, if you don't have access to online play, you can always emulate this tip by going to the difficulty menu before starting a race and turning rewinds off. But why is it so good to not have rewinds? Well, they're an excuse to be a bad driver. Having them off teaches you to avoid cutting corners and forces you to drive more conservatively to adapt to the car. It's good to drive less aggressively at the beginning of a race, especially if you're in a car that you aren't used to, so that you get used to its handling. After you've finished multiple races with rewinds off, you'll notice that your driving is significantly better than it was when you were playing with rewinds. However, playing online is still preferable to turning off rewinds because using rewinds online punishes you really hard. It'll rewind you and keep the rest of the race going. Basically, you'll get moved back while the entire grid ahead of you is moving forward. So trust me, it really teaches you to drive better. Also, driving online can hugely increase your racecraft and ability in wheel-to-wheel fighting. Many drivers in Forza Horizon 5 have absolutely no idea how to properly overtake a car and will literally just not brake in a heavy braking zone to quote-unquote overtake you. No, that's not how you do it. And yes, I will make a video on how to properly overtake at some point. But for now, let me just tell you that driving online will teach you how to deal with dirty drivers and give you practice driving against good racers that will help you get better at defensive driving and overtaking. So there you have it. Those are my 5 tips on how to win races in Forza Horizon 5. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons so I can keep making more content like this. Thank you to all of you for supporting the channel, and I'll see you next time.